Oh, there we go. I'm working from home. The connection doesn't seem to be that fast. All right, so this is the last of our transportation modules. And they want us to analyze transportation costs. Analyze supplier transportation costs. So freight audit. Companies need to implement procedures for auditing their freight bills. So what is a freight audit? Anywhere from 10 to 25% of all freight bills contain errors. So it's pretty easy to get an error in a freight bill. Those billing errors aren't in the shipper's favor. They never seem to be. Inventory errors, shipping errors, they're never in our favor. A freight audit is the process of analyzing a freight bill to make any necessary adjustments to ensure its accuracy. So the carrier invoice reconciliation compares the invoice against the agreed upon services received, ensuring the amounts charged are proper. So many companies outsource this process to companies called freight bureaus. So normally they charge a percentage of the value of the freight. About 60% of US companies outsource their freight audit services to freight bureaus. And I know we use one or two of them because it's kind of tedious to go compare the invoice to the shipping documents. So what you're doing, the entire freight payment process includes these steps. So you've received the freight bill, the carrier sends the invoice. The freight bill can be sent by snail mail, electronically via EDI, or by email. I don't think anybody sends it by snail mail anymore. Validate the invoices. Before paying the freight charges, there are several steps to verify the invoice has not yet been paid and that you have the right information to analyze it thoroughly. This includes checking the customer invoice number, learning how to read a bill of lading for shipment information, purchase orders, cross-checking all of this against your own records. Examples of freight cost elements can include the freight rate and how the freight classification for the product. Those are the two big ones. So the discount from list rate in general, the more freight you transport, the cheaper it is. So are they billing you at the right rate? How far? Usually they bill you by the mile. So what was the mileage? What was the cost? What was the weight? Does it look close to being right? And accessory freight charges offset the inefficiencies that are created by certain shipments, large, heavy, etc. Insurance, freight classification, is it classified right? Is the correct classification? And delivery guarantees, did they get it there on time? Two types of freight audits. So you got a manual freight audit. Manual audits are time consuming and it's easy to miss errors because the work is tedious and challenging to compare and remember. With the manual approach, it's more likely that batches of invoices will be randomly checked, and that leaves room for mistakes to slip through. The manual audit is only as good as the person conducting it. And that's why you would hire a freight bureau if you're doing a manual audit. Automated audits, though, use software. The systems can be integrated electronically with the freight carrier, making the freight auditing process and recovery easier and more efficient. I don't know if we use automated. I would imagine we'd have to use automated freight audit processes. And the combination approach allows the bulk of auditing work to be completed by the software, and any exceptions or problems are left to be reviewed by a human. That's probably what we do. So freight pre-audit or freight post-audit. Pre-audits are completed before paying the invoice. If discrepancies are found, they are clarified and resolved before payment's made. And a freight post-audit is completed after paying the invoice on the shipment. This is what we usually do. These audits can be done weekly, monthly, or in batches a few times a year. If discrepancies are found, the company files a claim for repayment. Or we just offset what we owe them, probably. The audit involves looking at the following items individually: delivery address, freight cost, mileage, accessories, deductions for discount, delivery guarantees, issues specific to you as a customer, and duplicate invoices. Kind of what we just covered. So cost analysis. This is an article from the ISM monthly magazine. They still are publishing a magazine, which is interesting. They also have it online. The monthly metric freight cost per unit kind of goes through, tells you how to do it. It's about 4 pages long. So modal, shipping by air is the most expensive. We already discussed that. The cost which a shipper or consignee is charged for the transportation of the goods is determined by several factors. The main factors in freight are the mode. Are you flying it? Are you putting it on a truck? The weight, the size, the distance, the points of pickup and delivery, and the actual goods being shipped, hazardous, fragile, etc. So Michelin has a plant that's way out in Newfoundland, Canada, and that trucks have to what they call deadhead up there to pick up the tires. So they've been putting them on trains, but because there's not much business up there, which is why they put the factory up there, cheap labor. It's a lot more expensive to use trucks to get those tires out of there. All these factors play their own independent role in determining the price or rate at which the freight will be transported, but they are also all interconnected. And the factors are converted to a formula or rate basis. This is the formula that then provides a discount from list price. So terms. So the rate basis is what we actually pay. So terms, the terms of transportation receipt of goods are based on the international commercial terms, Incoterms, developed by International Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, as we discussed before, the UCC free on board stuff is all obsolete. Don't use it. You see in several states that it's still in their laws, but it hasn't been updated since 2002, and the state legislatures just haven't gotten around to throwing it out yet. Risk trade-offs. Buyers need to understand the risk trade-offs in the Incoterms. Who will pay for shipping? Who will file claims for loss? Who pays for import-export taxes? And who pays loading and packaging? So we've already looked at these definitions. That was on the other one. That's just writing. This is kind of a cool one, though. This chart. This makes it easier to understand. So X works. The seller only has this responsibility. At his dock, he just makes the goods available. You'll notice that the buy in X works, the buyer has to load them on the truck. And then FCA, which is what we usually use, free carrier at, the seller has to load them on the truck, the buyer's truck, which is why we use that. Nobody uses CPT or CIP unless you're a broker, something like that. DPU, delivered at place unloaded, and DAP, delivered at place. So you can see the difference between the two is when it says place unloaded, it means you have to take it off the truck, not the seller. So delivered at place, the seller has to take it off the truck. That's the same with DDP, which delivered duty paid. And we have a few things like tires that we do this with. Most stuff is FCA. And then these are usually shipping terms that are used. Sea and inland waterways. So these are all modes. So that's a pretty handy chart. Leverage. There are several ways to leverage transportation costs depending on the mode. Incentive rate for greater volumes, combining shipments to a single destination, blanket rates where rates do not increase as shipping distance increases, which I think we work with. The rate is the same for all points within the blanket area. And deferred rate, shipper is flexible as to delivery time. The goods move at the carrier's convenience. We don't do that. All commodity rates, one rate per shipment. This is when you're shipping coal and copper and all that stuff. Lead time and cost of and the cost of the inventory. Lead time is the length of time between when the order is placed by PACCAR and the date the goods are available for use on PACCAR's dock. So that's how our materials people will measure lead time also. As lead time increases, organizations stock more safety stock. Yeah, we really don't do that. We try to work with the supplier to get it here on time. Inventory holding costs are generally estimated at 20 to 30% of the value annually. So hidden cost for inventory holding can add another 25 to 50% to the costs. Things like warehouse and inventory management salaries, warehouse capital equipment, computer costs, secondary quality costs as inspection, rework. This is what really starts getting expensive. So inventory holding costs can vary anywhere from 20 to about 50, 60% of the value of the items annually. Benchmarking, we covered a couple of times, but I guess they want to cover it one more time. Allows an organization to compare their freight rates against other organizations or historical performance. So compare freight rates based on transportation mode. The process helps organizations issue future RFQs and negotiate better rates. And third parties will also provide benchmarking services. 3P, well, it's the freight bureaus. No, this would be the 3PLs. Which of the following methods is not a way to leverage transportation costs? Well, this one's interesting. Any guesses? It's got to be D. Usually the longest answer is correct, but in this rate, this isn't going to help you leverage shipping costs at all. It's C. C is correct because compare freight rates is a benchmarking or auditing exercise to ensure that you're getting the correct rate for your goods. Are all valid methods. The others are all valid methods that help leverage and reduce transportation costs. Okay. One more. Acme Corporation is a large manufacturing company with 10 billion in annual revenues. The logistics director for Acme wants to be sure that he is getting the most competitive freight rates. So he details one of his freight analysts to compare some of the freight rates Acme has received for the same mode of transportation. What would have been a better approach for the director of logistics to take to compare rates? Hire an accountant? Nope. Hire a freight bureau? Probably. Not a freight forwarder and not a customs broker. So it's got to be B.
Yep, I would agree with that one.
Yeah. Yep. That one was pretty easy. All right. There are, I think that's it. Yep. There's 7 questions, I think, out there in the chat. So why don't you get on them and we'll either raise your hand or we'll get back together at 3:50. Okay, everybody's ready. Let's go over some answers. All right, number 1 is A, because an audit of invoices to check for accuracy would involve examining the carrier's charges as reflected on the invoices. 2 is also alpha, because duty-free zones allow imported goods to be exempt from customs duties, thus cannot reduce costs of importing goods. 3 is Charlie, because it defines rate basis. And 4 is also Charlie, because the U.S. Department of Commerce does not act for specific companies or organizations. And 5 is Bravo, because only through matching purchase orders, bills of lading, and invoices can you be certain that correct information has been carried through and all documents are correct. I mean, it's a nice to say, but it's not practical and would never, wouldn't happen in actuality. Option C is correct because weight, size, and distance are the 3 main factors. And 7 is alpha because the 2 goals are competing. What Sven needs to do is figure out the balance point between the 2 metrics by looking at how much each of them is saving. Sven can then modify goals of both the inventory and logistics manager so that each can achieve their metrics without hindering the other. All right. That's it. We do go to warehouse management on Monday. Talk to you guys later. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, Rick. You too.